Oh no, we do have the bullshit benchmarks in here. Good.
Yeah,
good. I'm excited for that. Yeah, that one's pretty bad.
So,
that one's okay. So we'll just start
with the hardware.
Yeah. So the rants will come a little later. We'll start with the hardware first.
So Intel announced the new 900 or 9000 series, which we all expected. The i5 9600K, i7 9700K.
But by new, he means it's still 14 nanometer.
Okay, but it's still the new product.
No, but you went new. You said new. Unless I just saw that out of the corner of my eye and I was wrong.
Hand.
Oh, I thought you were like new, and I'm like, yeah, new because.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not. No. So yeah, all of these chips have soldered IHS, which is great.
About time.
Yeah.
About time. We've been asking for so long, Intel. And the best part is Intel's been making the excuse for so long at this point of the fact that cost savings and also that there's not a big difference and all these other things, longevity, other stupid stuff like that. And now they're finally doing it. And it's like, oh, so are you just crawling back on all the shit you said? But
ultimately, this is the type of thing where it's like, yes, they took too long in doing it. But credit where credit is due, you finally listen to your customers.
Jeez, it's about time.
Yeah. So
now, of course,
I'm glad they did that.
If you're a company that sells exclusively things for delitting, yeah, you need to be a little careful right now.
Rip.
Unfortunately.
Some other things across all the chips is that there are some, we don't know to the extent yet, but some level of Spectre and Meltdown hardware and software and microcode mitigations in place.
Which, as you'd expect, I mean, they said that they were going to have that stuff fixed, of course. Intel said they're going to have it fixed in the next hardware release. They said that a while back.
Yeah.
But of course, this is not necessarily a guarantee that's fixed, considering how big it's been.
They specified mitigation, meaning it's somewhat dealt with.
Yeah.
Not completely
The term
fixed.
mitigation means towards fixing.
Yes.
In case you guys didn't know what it actually means.
They don't, I mean, even if they felt like it was completely fixed, they would not want to say that.
Yeah, because then they could get sued
Until
and stuff.
they've tested it, other security researchers have tested it, 5 years have gone by, and then they've tested it again.
Exactly.
Like, this is not the type of thing you want to mess with, so they're going to say mitigations.
And realistically, you always kind of have to say mitigations because...
Yeah.
You know, crap happens. Yeah. So, but we can go over a quick spec rundown here.
Yeah, let's start with the 9900K. So this one is... the recommended retail price is $488. It's been launching at $499 at most retailers.
As you kind of expect to. Yeah, I mean, there, MSI, who knows how much the, retailers are being charged for this, but all in all, it's an expensive chip.
Yeah, and also the one thing that I want to point out, all of the recommended retail pricing is at 1,000 or more units being purchased by the retailer.
Yeah,
and we don't know because pre-orders have been really odd this time around, in which we've seen some sites put them up, take them down, put them up, take them down.
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of really odd things, and so I'm wondering if retailers just didn't get very much, and so they're trying to figure out how they want to handle that.
That's possible.
Which would also explain why every retailer has a price increase above MSRP. Normally, you might see with something like this, if they were all getting good amounts, some have, wildly different pricing. But no, we're seeing across the board, it's pretty much everyone's at about the same price, with the exception that for some reason Best Buy is $10 higher.
Which is a little odd.
They're normally the ones that are
that's
good
including
about
their
MSRP.
online price, not their in-store price.
Yeah.
Like Best Buy in general.
Mm-hmm. And normally they're much better about MSRP because they're an established retailer.
Yeah, in this space specifically.
Amazon and Newegg have always been more to fluctuate with their pricing than Best Buy has. And
yeah,
so
Best Buy usually charges, they have a consistent price and then they do sales, whereas Amazon and Newegg are fighting each other algorithmically all the time.
Yeah.
And so they fluctuate by the hour sometimes, right? Whereas Best Buy usually is pretty consistent with the pricing until they decide to do a sale because it's been around for X amount of time or whatever.
So yeah, the 9900K is an 8-core, 16-thread, with a 3.6 gigahertz base, 5 gigahertz single core boost.
Now, of course, the big point is overclocking with any of these,
which I'll talk about in a second, because we have some numbers on that finally.
Yeah.
The 8-core turbo with the base cooler and everything is 4.7 gigahertz, so across all cores, which is pretty cool. 4-core turbo is 4.8. 2-core turbo is 5, so you actually get 5 gigahertz with 2 and 1 core.
So one thing I wanted to mention here, though, when it comes to boosting from Intel, is there is some complications that come into play. That's going to assume certain levels of cooling performance and stuff.
Yeah.
And also that's going to assume that it's going outside of the TDP. I do not imagine that they have 8 cores at 4.7 gigahertz in a 95-watt TDP.
Oh, definitely not.
And so it's very similar to, it's akin to what AMD's running with Ryzen with their Precision Boost Overdrive. PBO is like, hey, do you have more thermal headroom? Do you have more power headroom? Then we'll push your silicon further. Yeah. And Intel's boosts stuff works similarly. The point here, though, is I don't think Intel expects anybody to put a cooler so anemic that it can't hit that on it unless you're building like an ITX rig, which at that point you probably should be keeping that kind of stuff in mind.
Yeah.
You know,
and I mean,
you should be doing something special.
Also, you should be expecting, if you aren't doing something special, less cooling performance, which means a little bit more throttling.
Yeah, right. Which in that case, I bet you like when the 9900 comes out, the non-K edition, you know, its 8-core boost is probably going to be like 4.2 or something much lower.
And then, so it's got 16 megabytes of L3 cache. The interesting thing, so we did get some overclocking numbers, and at least with the chips that were tested, they were able to get 5.3 on all cores on with an all-in-one cooler.
Now that 5.3 you said, right? Yeah, which is pretty significant. Now, of course, who knows how lucky people are getting, right? You know, and Intel has been known to send out slightly better binned chips at the beginning, and I don't think it's something they necessarily do to reviewers. I think they just, their first production run that they send out tends to be the higher bin chips, and then they do the rest of the stuff later. I'm speculating here, of course.
I also wouldn't doubt if they use the lower binned chips to figure out the rest of how they want to do their product stack, and so they send the higher binned ones out first. And then
do more testing.
Yes.
That could be
because
too,
you've got to build out,
the other stuff later.
Pick and choose how you want the 9900 to be binned versus the K and all of that. So that's all got to play into that, and so that might be a factor.
That could be. So, point is, you know, I would expect somewhere in the realm of 5 gigahertz on all 8 cores, which of course is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, from AMD, we're seeing in best case scenarios 4.5 on across 8 cores. Now, I guess we can jump into the next one, but before we do the bullshit benchmarks, after we go finish the spec list, I do have some stuff I want to talk about the 9900K specifically.
If we're talking about the 9900K, talk about it.
Well, I want to. It might be a little ranty. I want to get through the specs so people aren't waiting for the specs. So,
so then next up is the 9700K. This one's recommended retail price is $375. We're seeing $400 essentially for the launch price at most retailers.
This one actually surprised me a little bit, not because it wasn't leaked all over the frickin' place, because it was. So I wasn't necessarily surprised it came out, but I'm just surprised that Intel did indeed go with this configuration in terms of core to hyperthreading. You know what I mean? Really. I don't know, it just feels a little weird. So it's an 8 core with no hyperthreading. Yeah. So at that point, for just gaming, and I mean, since it's 8 cores, realistically for gaming and streaming, 9700K is going to do you pretty good. You don't probably really need to spend the extra. And I think that's the chip that in some ways is going to compete better with what AMD has offering wise, because it's like, you're closer to that same price territory, still above it, but you're closer to that price territory, and you're going to be getting better gaming performance because of the higher clock speeds. And I think the clock speed bump will also help make up for the fact that AMD's got the extra threads.
Yes.
So this is the probably more competitive chip to AMD, although of course it's still a decent amount more expensive.
At this point, I've considered, outside of the extreme stuff, the i9 to be the top tier gaming chip.
Yeah.
Not the one that most people, even at the higher end, should buy.
The i9 is generally like what they've been using that nomenclature for, at least in high performance desktops and laptops, has mostly been, ignore the dog, sorry, has mostly, I think, been to say this is the best you can possibly get from us on this current platform. Now, I don't really like them using the i9 terminology in Ultrabooks. That's something where I'm like, just please stop. But in terms of like, you know, I think it's a good step up to kind of signify something different.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 8 cores, no hyperthreading.
Yeah.
Now,
so,
clock speed wise.
Yeah, it's got a 3.6 gigahertz base, similar to the i9, and then 4.9 gigahertz single core boost.
Oh, I wonder where that number came from.
Selectively chosen so that the i9 can be 5.0 gigahertz as the first
allegedly
chip.
Selectively
most
chosen.
likely.
yeah, I would assume.
8-core turbo is 4.6 gigahertz. 4-core turbo is 4.7. 2-core is 4.8.
I like how it's one lower than on everything other than the 2-core. Yeah. It's 100 megahertz lower.
And then 12 megabits or megabytes of...
I'd be scared if it had only 12 megabits of cache.
12 megabytes of L3 cache. All in all, this seems like a pretty...
This is a really good chip all around, yeah. And this is something that... maybe certain people we know, like Calvin, who's been on here, so I guess I can say his name. I was thinking, like, maybe I shouldn't. You know, this might be a better direction for him to go versus spending the extra.
If Amazon had the pre-orders up, he would have pre-ordered it by now.
Did he didn't pre-order the 9900K though, right?
No, he was going to do the 7, but
he's going to do Amazon. The 7. Okay, is that still his plan?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think it's good, especially if he's not going to stream a ton in the future.
And he mostly plays WoW.
Yeah. Now, of course, if he's going to stream, probably his best bet, even with this chip, would probably be to just go ahead and use NVENC instead of X264. But anyway, though,
And then we've got the i5 9600K. This one, I actually thought it would be more expensive. I was kind of thinking closer to 300 even.
Well, I would agree with you if the core to hyperthreading was different. So it's a 6-core with no hyperthreading. If it was a 6-core with 12 threads...
I didn't expect that because then that would put it in a really awkward spot as far as thread count compared to the 9700K.
It would?
It would just make it look weird to people that...
Don't know, maybe.
Yeah. It's like when you see a more expensive chip with less threads and threads are being advertised on the lower chip, you're like, wow.
It is an advertising nightmare, yeah, which is frustrating. I don't know. I'm sick of Intel acting like SMT costs so much. Though, you know what I mean? They've always done that where they hyper-price their hyper-threading name for SMT, whereas AMD is dumping that into most chips, and it's only the absolute where every cent matters where they're pulling that off because it does save some money.
So pricing wise, it's $262 is the recommended price, and then $280 is about what we've been seeing it at. Now that excites me because I think that we'll end up seeing after a few months go by probably $250 for this,
which is a very good price for this chip. I mean, you're looking at 6 cores rather than 8. Versus for the around this, that's very similar budget to like a 2700. You're looking at 6 cores instead of 8 cores, and you're looking at no hyperthreading. But if you're exclusively gaming, right, your options if you're just a gamer basically that has a pretty good budget for a PC on AMD, it's like 2700 level stuff, or it's going to be this. And realistically, if you're only going to game and you're not planning to super multitask while gaming or anything, this is going to be the better option. Yeah. Because it's the same price, but you're going to get higher clock speeds. And of course, the higher clock speeds here, this is one thing that's kind of like, is the clock speeds are indeed higher, and you'll be able to overclock a lot higher, but I kind of feel like the actual turbo speeds that are being advertised here aren't that competitive with AMD.
What we have is 3.7 gigahertz base clock, 4.6 gigahertz single core boost, with the 6-core turbo being 4.3, 4-core being 4.4, 2-core being 4.5. So I'm very interested to see what this can overclock to.
Because that's my thing is Precision Boost Overdrive will push a lot of like 2700Xs into the like 4.3, 4.4 range. And so if you're looking at similar clock speeds, IPC, as we know, is basically identical between the two, especially comparing Zen Plus versus this versus whatever this is. Is this Skylake at this point?
I don't remember. But what could last gen's like the 8000 series overclock to pretty consistently?
So like the 8700K could pretty consistently hit 5.1.
Do you know about the i5?
The i5 I think was 4.8 to 5. It depends.
Because I was going to say, if these can, especially with the soldered, can hit 5 pretty consistently.
Yeah, then that's a big deal. Of course, the thing, though, is looking at this from a gamer's perspective, learning to overclocking isn't a particularly simple task.
No.
And unless you're buying it from somebody that knows how to do that and offers that as a service, as we do.
But Intel also offers the overclock protection, which is going to allow more people to, for very little cost, be more comfortable
overclocking. This is true. Yeah. This is true.
Which I hope that AMD introduces at some point. Because
I would love it if they did. Yeah. It makes them money in the end. Really, it does. Like, it's not,
Yeah. But I mean, even if the basic just upping the multiplier, upping the multiplier, and not really messing with the voltage or anything, if that can get you 4.4-ish, like that would be...
Well, what you could do realistically is you could probably do not much of a voltage increase, not even touching it, and do like 4.3 L cores, 4.4 L cores, right? Yeah. But even then, I mean, Precision Boost Overdrive is going to push you close to that same realm.
I mean, that base turbo does too.
Yeah. So at that point,
but yeah,
but so no, you need to be, I think, fairly experienced at it. But I do think that as more information goes out about how overclocking, how to do it correctly,
overclocking is becoming more and more normalized. I think among the
and it should be because it's just finding where your chip performs best. Yeah. That's all it really is finding what bin level your chip is.
Get the most out of whatever chip you get.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's ultimately what you should be doing.
I would imagine so.
And then this has 9 megabytes of L3 cache, which puts it at the same cache per core as the 9700K.
Which is fine. I mean, cache doesn't affect gaming that much anyway. Yeah. That's for more productivity focused things. So before we get into the bullshit benchmarks that we'll talk about in a minute, I wanted to mention, here's my thing with the 9900K, is it is a very fast chip. Mm-hmm. And it's the best gaming chip. which we'll get into more of how Intel loves to advertise that with the bullshit benchmarks. But it is the best gaming chip out there, or it's going to be. I can say that basically perfectly. I'm confident in saying that, right? But here's my thing. For the same price, you can get 12 cores with 24 threads from AMD, and I'm not talking 1000 series Threadripper, I'm talking 2000 series, like Precision Boost Overdrive hitting 4.3 gigahertz on all cores type stuff. Really, really high-end stuff. But here's where the differences come into play, because obviously you do still get that edge out in performance by a good amount with the 8-core 9900K versus something like a 2920X, right? But the other advantages that you get on that platform, even if you're just a gamer, I feel like justifies the no cost increase. Because you're sitting here, you've got 64 lanes instead of 16. You've got...
It's 40 when you count the chip being in the motherboard.
On Threadripper?
No, on...
Okay, but that's not exactly how that works. I won't get into too much detail, but the extra lanes come from the platform controller hub, which only has 4 lanes to the CPU. So that means anything connected to the platform controller hub can use up to the 4 lanes, but multiple things connected to the platform controller hub can't use that much at the same time. So if you have 3 SSDs
But how many
it,
gamers have...
No, right, okay, but what I'm getting at...
If we're talking about for gamers...
Well, what I'm talking about, I'll continue. So you get more memory channels, you get longer-term support from AMD, you get longer-term platform support, you get socket cross-compatibility, and you get a better upgrade path as a whole, and you get what are better boards for about the same price.
Yeah.
And I feel like most of those advantages just simply outweigh the I get better single-core performance, especially... now, it depends on what games you play, but especially... because we're seeing more and more games like Forza and Battlefield being able to push 8 cores pretty hard, then you're at the point where, okay, now you can get a 12 core, you've got extra cores for doing other stuff.
When in any gaming product has buying the peak performance for something been the best overall value? Never. But I feel like it's more extreme than ever. To a point that's I don't really think so.
I mean, you're getting a chip that is arguably, factoring in everything, not just chip performance, twice as good in terms of platform. And I just feel like the advantage is there. And because we're talking longevity, right? It's kind of where I'm coming from, I guess, is you're looking at a platform that's going to get you further with whatever you want to do with your rig in the future.
But if you're talking about longevity, having a chip that performs worse and having to upgrade that... Yes, you might not have to upgrade as much when you go to upgrade, but having to upgrade that chip sooner because of that
but it doesn't perform I mean, it's slower single core, but but
it also doesn't clock as high for 8 cores.
No, you're right, it does not.
So it's not just single core that's slower.
Okay.
It's overall clocked slower.
It is, yes. Yeah, well, okay, that's complex, but I don't know. I just feel like
there's people that still use 2700Ks very well.
Yeah.
And I think that this would be a good, or could be, well, I mean, obviously we'll have to wait and see how things progress, but something like the 9900K could be another one of those, you don't upgrade your shit for 5 years.
But I think it can be the same thing could be said, especially with games being more multi-core optimized. The same thing could be said with AMD, and you get a better platform overall. You do. And you're going to get, and especially because you're not overclocking to the extreme levels that these are, you're not pushing the silicon as hard, you're going to get better longevity out of the silicon, period.
What if you don't push this to the max? And you still would get much higher clocks.
Again, it comes down to much higher clocks doesn't necessarily mean substantially better gaming performance.
I'm not saying it's better for everyone.
I guess.
I'm just saying there's a place for it in the market. There's never when it comes to the peak performance product for any lineup of anything, is it for everyone, even in the high spender club? There's always times and places for everything.
No, right. I don't know. I just don't like the pricing on it. Even $50 cheaper, which if we start seeing that right there does help a little, I think, with that, because
it's
not like we're seeing...
will. We're already seeing the MSRP is $15 less than the actual price you're buying it for.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, it's not like Intel chips don't go down in price over the year.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just have weird feelings about it, I guess. It is a beast of a chip. I know it's going to be a monster. And I wouldn't be surprised if in multi-core benchmarks at overclocked, both, Threadripper, a 12-core, and this, you're not seeing too huge of an advantage going to the Threadripper. So, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just feel like it's in a weird place in the market.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. But I feel like for anyone buying, like, peak gaming hardware, it's always been a weird place.
I guess it has.
Like,
of course, I have a bias because I do come from the very much so insane use of a computer for multitasking. Like, cores matter a lot to me. RAM matters a lot to me. PCIe lanes matter a lot to me. And I think that does provide...
PCIe lanes don't matter that much to most people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's true.
Like,
right?
I've got a graphics card. If I get anything else, it's going to be a capture card.
I mean, dude, PCIe lanes, I'm insane, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, you are.
Because,
One last thing I wanted to mention on the 9900K before we get into the benchmarking stuff.
This was fun.
With LN2, somebody overclocked it to 6.9 gigahertz on all cores.
If
that was sustainable...
we should re-mention that on our episode 69 podcast.
Okay. If that was sustainable... That would be insane.
Yeah,